Between the peaks that pierce the clouds and the valleys where ancient faiths were born, a kingdom rises from the roof of the world. Nepal cradles the tallest mountains on Earth within borders no larger than England, yet contains spiritual and natural wonders that reach far beyond geography. Prayer flags flutter in thin mountain air, carrying mantras across glaciers and gorges. Temple bells echo through medieval courtyards, where time moves to rhythms established centuries before the modern world awakened. This is a land where Sherpas guide climbers toward impossible summits, where rhinos walk through jungle mist, where the footprints of the Buddha remain sacred ground. From the chaos and devotion of Kathmandu to the silent majesty of Everest's flanks, from tiger-haunted forests to lakes that mirror infinity, Nepal transcends the boundaries between earth and sky, between the human and the divine. In the heart of Kathmandu Valley, where the ancient trade routes from Tibet once converged, a massive white dome rises like a mountain made by human hands. Buddhanath Stupa commands the landscape with dimensions that speak of cosmic ambition. Its mandala base stretches nearly 500 feet in circumference, crowned by a golden spire that catches the first and last light of each day. The all-seeing eyes of the Buddha gaze in 4 cardinal directions from the gilded tower, watching over this holiest of Tibetan Buddhist sites outside Tibet itself. The stupa's origins reach back 17 centuries, though the structure standing today was restored following the great earthquake that shook these valleys in 2015. Legend speaks of a devoted woman named Jadzima who received permission to build a monument as large as a buffalo hide could encompass, then cleverly cut the hide into thin strips to encircle an enormous plot of land. Pilgrims circle the stupa's base in a clockwise flow that has worn the stone smooth across generations, spinning prayer wheels that release countless prayers with each revolution. 365 prayer wheels line the perimeter, each rotation believed to accumulate the same merit as reciting the mantras inscribed within. Strings of prayer flags radiate from the central spire like the sun's rays, their colors representing the 5 elements: blue for sky, white for air, red for fire, green for water, yellow for earth. Butter lamps flicker in countless alcoves, their flames maintained by the faithful who believe each light illuminates the path toward enlightenment. As morning mist lifts from the stupa's whitewashed walls, maroon-robed monks begin their circumambulations. The air fills with the deep tones of horns blown from monastery rooftops, calling the devout to prayer. Tibetan refugees and Nepali pilgrims move in meditation, some prostrating fully with each step, their devotion measured in months and years rather than hours. Where the valley meets the first rise of foothills, a stupa older than memory crowns a sacred hill, reached by a serpentine stairway of 365 stone steps. Swayambhunath peers across Kathmandu from its elevated throne, its golden spire visible for miles in every direction. Local lore claims this hill emerged from the waters of an ancient lake when a bodhisattva sliced through the valley's rim with a sword, draining the primordial sea to make the land habitable. The temple complex acquired its colloquial name, the Monkey Temple, from the hundreds of rhesus macaques that inhabit these slopes, descendants of monkeys said to have sprung from the lice in the hair of the bodhisattva Manjushri. These bold primates rule the stairway, alternately entertaining and confounding pilgrims who make the ascent. Buddhist stupas and Hindu shrines stand side by side here, embodying Nepal's remarkable religious synthesis. The main stupa dates to the 5th century, though archaeological evidence suggests sacred structures occupied this site 2,000 years ago. A massive Vajra, thunderbolt of enlightenment, sits at the eastern approach, cast in bronze and guarding the ascent. From the platform surrounding the stupa, the entire Kathmandu Valley unfolds like a map rendered in 3 dimensions. Prayer flags snap in the constant breeze that sweeps up from the valley floor. Pilgrims spin enormous prayer wheels set into the stupa's base, each turn releasing prayers to travel on the wind. The 13 golden tiers of the spire symbolize the 13 stages toward enlightenment, ascending toward a canopy that represents the void beyond all worldly concerns. At dawn and dusk, when golden light transforms the white dome into something almost otherworldly, the chanting of monks drifts from surrounding monasteries. The eyes painted on all 4 sides of the tower watch eternally, representing the omniscient wisdom of the Buddha surveying the world with compassion. 20 kilometers east of Kathmandu's chaos, cobblestone streets wind through a city that time chose to preserve rather than transform. Bhaktapur, the city of devotees, rose to prominence as the capital of the Malla kingdom in the 12th century, when artisans and architects created urban spaces of such refined beauty that 5 centuries later, the city remains a living museum. Durbar Square forms the heart of this medieval masterpiece, where temples and palaces demonstrate Newari architectural genius at its apex. The 55-window palace stretches along one side of the square, its intricately carved wooden windows creating a facade that seems more like lacework than lumber. Built in 1427 by King Yaksha Malla, the palace represents the pinnacle of craftsmanship in a culture that elevated wood carving to a sacred art form. The Golden Gate serves as the palace's ceremonial entrance, its gilded surface worked into images of deities so detailed that each figure appears capable of stepping free from the metal. Above the gate, a figure of goddess Taleju rides a mythical creature, overlooking all who pass beneath. Rising from the square, the 5-tiered Nyatapola temple ascends more than 30 meters into the sky, the tallest pagoda in Nepal. King Bhupatindra Malla commissioned its construction in 1702, and remarkably, the structure survived the 2015 earthquake that devastated so many of the valley's treasures. 5 pairs of guardian figures flank the temple stairs, each level protected by beings of progressively greater power. Legendary wrestlers at the base, then elephants, then lions, then griffins, with goddesses at the summit. Throughout Bhaktapur's lanes, pottery squares fill with clay vessels drying in the sun. Artisans work at crafts unchanged for centuries, wood carvers creating windows and screens, metalworkers casting bells and statues, weavers at traditional looms. The city produces the valley's finest yogurt, served in terracotta bowls that impart an earthy flavor unlike anything found elsewhere. As afternoon light turns the brick structures amber, the city reveals why it once rivaled Florence and Venice in its golden age, a place where every surface bears the mark of artists who understood beauty as a form of devotion. Just across the Bagmati River from Kathmandu, separated by less than 6 kilometers but distinct in character, Patan has earned its reputation as the city of fine arts through centuries of dedicated craftsmanship. Where Bhaktapur embodies medieval grandeur, Patan refines that aesthetic into something more delicate, more intricate, a city of artisans rather than kings. Patan Durbar Square concentrates artistic achievement into a space that seems to hold more masterpieces than physics should allow. The former royal palace stretches along the square's eastern edge, its three main courtyards containing some of the finest woodwork in the Himalayas. The Sundari Chowk courtyard houses a sunken bath called Tusha Hiti, adorned with a golden spout shaped like a makara, a mythical crocodile, through which water flows as it has for 3 centuries. Temples crowd the square in an almost impossible density. Krishna Mandir with its 21 golden pinnacles, Bhimsen Temple with its arcade of shops at ground level, Vishwanath Temple guarded by stone elephants whose expressions suggest both wisdom and weariness. The Krishna Mandir stands unique among Nepal's temples, built entirely of stone in the Shikara style more commonly seen in India, its 3 stories rising with precise symmetry, while stone friezes along the upper levels illustrate scenes from the Mahabharata and Ramayana. Beyond the Durbar Square, Patan's true soul reveals itself in the metalworkers' quarters, where the sound of hammers on bronze and copper creates a constant rhythm. This city has produced Buddhist and Hindu statues for over 1,000 years, works of such quality that they grace museums and temples across Asia. The Mahabuddha temple, built entirely from terracotta bricks, each molded with an image of the Buddha, rises in a narrow courtyard. 9,000 Buddhas form the temple's skin, creating a structure that is itself a massive prayer. The Golden Temple, or Hiranya Varna Mahavihar, glows in the morning sun, its copper and gilt metal facade maintained by the Shakya clan that has guarded this sacred space since the 12th century. Inside the courtyard, a statue of the Buddha sits in eternal meditation, while prayer wheels line the walls and small boys, training to be monks, run between pillars that have witnessed centuries of devotion. Beyond the Kathmandu Valley's densely woven tapestry of culture, the landscape opens westward into something wilder, leading to a city cradled between lake and mountain. Pokhara rests at an elevation of just 800 meters, yet from its shores, the Annapurna Massif rises to over 8,000 meters in a distance shorter than 30 kilometers, one of the most dramatic elevation gains on the planet. This city has served for generations as the jumping-off point for treks into the Himalayas, a place where lowland warmth meets alpine grandeur. Trekking agencies line the streets of the Lakeside district, their walls plastered with route maps and summit photographs. Porters negotiate loads and wages, preparing to carry impossible weights into the mountains. The air carries stories of successful summits and tragic losses, of avalanches and altitude sickness, of dawn views worth any hardship. Pokhara's character changed forever in the 1950s when the first climbing expeditions arrived seeking access to the Annapurna Range. Maurice Herzog and his French team used this area as their base in 1950 when they became the first humans to summit an 8,000-meter peak, Annapurna 1, though the achievement came at the cost of severe frostbite and desperate retreat. The city sprawls along the northeastern shore of Phiwa Lake, its development following no particular plan, growing organically as more trekkers discovered this perfect gateway to the mountains. International Mountain Museum sits at the base of the surrounding hills, documenting Himalayan climbing history, displaying equipment from historic expeditions, honoring those who reached summits and those who didn't return. Tibetan refugees established settlements around Pokhara in the 1960s, bringing their culture and crafts. The Tashi Palkal camp became a center for carpet weaving and handicrafts, while monasteries appeared on hillsides, their prayer wheels turning in the wind that sweeps down from glaciers. From certain vantage points in Pokhara, the view seems impossible. Snow-capped peaks rising directly from the lake's reflection, creating a symmetry between water and ice that makes the eye uncertain which direction is up. The second largest lake in Nepal stretches for nearly 5 kilometers, its surface a perfect mirror when morning winds have not yet disturbed the water. Phiwa Lake holds Pokhara to its shore, providing both livelihood and recreation, a place where fishermen paddle wooden boats at dawn while paragliders descend from Sarangkot to land on its banks by afternoon. A small island punctuates the lake's expanse, accessible only by boat, where Talbarahi Temple rises on 2 stories of white stone. Dedicated to the boar incarnation of Vishnu, this temple sees a constant stream of pilgrims who make the crossing to offer prayers and flowers. On Saturday mornings, the island fills with devotees, their boats clustering around the shore like petals on a flower. Fishtail Lodge sits on a peninsula that extends into the lake, reachable only by a small raft that ferries guests across the narrow channel. From its gardens, the Makapuchhare Peak, the sacred fishtail mountain that has never been summited, dominates the northern horizon. This mountain rises to 6,993 meters, but remains inviolate, climbing forbidden since 1957 to honor its religious significance. On the southern shore, a steep trail ascends the hillside to where a brilliant white stupa crowns the summit, the World Peace Pagoda, built by Japanese Buddhist monks in a quest to promote harmony across borders and faiths. Construction began in 1973 and continued for 26 years. Japanese and Nepali workers laboring together to manifest a vision of peace. The pagoda follows traditional Buddhist architecture, its dome gleaming white while golden figures of the Buddha occupy niches on all 4 sides. The climb to the pagoda takes 45 minutes through forest that rings with bird calls, the path steep but rewarded with expanding views. From the stupa's platform, the entire Annapurna range spreads across the northern horizon while Phiwa Lake glitters below. Prayer flags strung from the pagoda flutter endlessly, their mantras carried toward the peaks. At sunrise and sunset, the white dome glows pink and gold, becoming a beacon visible from every point in the valley. Rising north of Pokhara like a wall between earth and heaven, the Annapurna Massif dominates the skyline with a presence that transcends mere geology. This range contains 3 peaks exceeding 8,000 meters, Annapurna Tharone, Annapurna II, and Annapurna III, along with numerous others that would be considered giant mountains anywhere else on Earth. The name Annapurna translates as Goddess of the Harvest or Provider of Food, linking these icy summits to the life-giving abundance of the lowlands. Hindus consider these mountains sacred embodiments of the goddess Parvati in her aspect as nourisher. The mountains sustain life through the rivers that flow from their glaciers, carrying meltwater that eventually feeds millions in the Gangetic Plain. Annapurna. Ice stands at 8,091 meters, the 10th highest mountain in the world, but carries a more sobering distinction, the highest fatality rate of any 8,000-meter peak. For every 3 climbers who reach its summit, 1 does not return, a death rate that has improved only marginally despite advances in equipment and weather forecasting. The mountain's south face presents a wall of ice and rock that climbers describe with awe bordering on terror. 3,000 vertical meters of objective danger where avalanches sweep approaches without warning. Maurice Herzog's 1950 ascent represented not just the first 8,000-meter summit, but was accomplished without bottled oxygen and with maps so inaccurate the team spent weeks searching for the correct approach. Herzog and Louis Lacanau reached the summit on June 3rd, fulfilling a goal that had obsessed climbers since the possibility of such heights became thinkable. Their descent became an epic of survival. Severe frostbite, snow blindness, Herzog losing his gloves near the summit, and suffering injuries that eventually required amputation of fingers and toes. The Annapurna Circuit Trek circles the entire massif, crossing the Thorong La Pass at 5,416 meters, taking trekkers through climate zones that range from subtropical jungle to high-altitude desert. Villages cling to mountain slopes along the route, Manang, Pisang, Marfa, each with its own microclimate and culture. The circuit requires 2 to 3 weeks to complete, drawing tens of thousands annually who seek to walk in the shadow of these giants without attempting their summits. From any viewpoint in the Pokhara Valley, the Annapurna Range defines the limits of the possible, its peaks touching a realm where humans survive only briefly before the altitude demands retreat. Far to the east, where Nepal's border meets Tibet along the highest reaches of the planet, one mountain rises above all others, so tall that jet aircraft cruise below its summit. Mount Everest, known to the Nepali as Sagarmatha, goddess of the sky, and to Tibetans as Chomolungma, mother of the world, stands at 8,849 meters, the highest point on Earth's surface. The mountain remained unknown to the wider world until 1852, when Indian mathematician Radhanath Sikdar calculated its height from survey measurements taken hundreds of kilometers away. Named for George Everest, the British Surveyor General of India, who never actually saw the mountain, it became Peak 15 in colonial records before acquiring the name that would make it legendary. For 30 years, expeditions probed Everest's defenses, attempting routes from Tibet since Nepal remained closed to foreigners. George Mallory and Andrew Irvine vanished on the northeast ridge in 1924, their fate debated to this day. Did they reach the summit before their deaths or fall short by margins measured in hundreds of vertical feet? Mallory's body was discovered in 1999 at 8,155 meters, frozen in the position of his fall. But whether he stood on top remains one of mountaineering's enduring mysteries. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay claimed the first confirmed summit on May 29, 1953, approaching from the south through Nepal after the country opened to mountaineering. Their success came after years of preparation, the culmination of a British expedition that placed 8 camps on the mountain. Hillary later described the summit moment with characteristic understatement. "We knocked the bastard off." The Khumbu Valley provides access to Everest's south side, a region where Sherpa culture developed in high-altitude villages surrounded by peaks that would be the highest mountains on any other continent. The valley's fields produce potatoes and barley at elevations where most crops cannot grow, while yaks provide transportation and sustenance. Monasteries perch on hillsides, their monks maintaining traditions brought from Tibet centuries ago when their ancestors crossed the Nangpa La Pass seeking better pastures. Everest Base Camp sits at 5,364 meters on the Khumbu Glacier, reachable after 8 days of trekking from Lukla. Each spring, the camp transforms into a temporary city of tents as expeditions gather, acclimatize, and wait for weather windows. The climb from base camp requires navigating the Khumbu Icefall's chaotic maze of seracs and crevasses, ascending the Lhotse Face's steep ice wall, surviving the oxygen-starved death zone above 8,000 meters. Over 300 people have died on Everest since climbing began, their bodies often remaining where they fell, becoming landmarks for those who follow. The mountain collects the ambitious and the unfortunate with equal indifference. Yet the summit continues to draw climbers who willingly mortgage homes, risk families, accept death as a possible outcome, all for a few minutes standing higher than any other point on Earth. Leaving the mountains behind, traveling south to where the Himalayan foothills meet the Terai Plains, a garden grows around ruins that mark the spot where human history pivoted toward compassion. Lumbini, a small village in southern Nepal, witnessed an event 2,500 years ago that would eventually influence 1/3 of humanity. Here, according to both tradition and archaeological evidence, Queen Maya Devi gave birth to Siddhartha Gautama while grasping the branch of a sal tree. The child who became the Buddha, the awakened one, was born into luxury as a prince of the Shakya clan. His father ruled from nearby Kapilavastu, attempting to shield his son from knowledge of suffering. The attempt failed, as such attempts must, and at age 29, Siddhartha abandoned his palace to seek understanding of human existence. Emperor Ashoka visited Lumbini in 249 BCE, erecting a pillar to commemorate the Buddha's birthplace. That sandstone column still stands, 6.5 meters tall, bearing an inscription in Brahmi script that establishes the site's authenticity beyond doubt. The inscription reads, "King Piyadasi, beloved of the gods, in the 20th year of his coronation, came himself and worshipped because the Buddha, sage of the Shakyas, was born here." For centuries, Lumbini remained a pilgrimage site visited by devout Buddhists from across Asia. Then, as Buddhism declined in India, the gardens fell into obscurity, gradually forgotten until 1896, when a German archaeologist rediscovered the Ashoka Pillar. International attention returned, and Nepal designated Lumbini a special development zone, inviting Buddhist nations to build monasteries representing their unique traditions. The Maya Devi Temple stands at the complex's heart, its simple white structure sheltering excavated foundations and a marker stone indicating the exact spot of the Buddha's birth. Pilgrims from Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, China, Japan, Tibet, and Korea circle the temple, their diverse robes and chants creating a visible demonstration of Buddhism's spread across cultures. The Lumbini Development Zone extends across 8 square kilometers, divided into monastic zones where each nation's interpretation of Buddhist architecture presents itself. The Myanmar Golden Temple gleams with gilt surfaces. The German monastery sits in minimalist contemplation. The Thai temple displays traditional pointed roofs. The Great Lotus Stupa rises on Japanese foundations. Each structure honors the same awakening while expressing it through different aesthetic languages. The sacred garden surrounding the temples contains the Puskarini pool, where Maya Devi bathed before giving birth. Bodhi trees shade walkways, descendants of the original tree under which Siddhartha achieved enlightenment. Prayer flags flutter between branches, their mantras joining those that have been spoken here for 25 centuries. As evening approaches and the call to prayer drifts from distant temples, Lumbini feels less like a place than a doorway, not to another location, but to an understanding that suffering can be transcended, that enlightenment remains possible, that the light kindled here still illuminates the world. The Terai lowlands spread across Nepal's southern border, a band of jungle and grassland distinct from the mountains that dominate the country's image. Here, where the altitude measures hundreds rather than thousands of meters, Chitwan National Park preserves 932 square kilometers of sal forest, riverine woodland, and elephant grass that grows higher than a person can reach. Before becoming a protected area in 1973, this region served as hunting grounds for Nepal's royalty and their guests. King George V shot 39 tigers during a single visit in 1911, a statistic that reflects attitudes toward wildlife that have since transformed dramatically. By the 1960s, uncontrolled hunting and habitat loss had reduced Nepal's tiger population to such low numbers that extinction seemed inevitable. The creation of the national park reversed that trajectory. Today, Chitwan harbors over 120 Bengal tigers, their population stable and slowly growing. These apex predators hunt through grass meadows and forest shadows, capable of taking down gaur, wild cattle weighing over a ton, with strategic precision. Even more remarkably, Chitwan has become a sanctuary for the greater one-horned rhinoceros, a species that once roamed from Pakistan to Myanmar, but now survives only in scattered pockets. The park's rhino population exceeds 600, representing one of conservation's genuine success stories. These armored herbivores feed in the grasslands, their prehistoric appearance unchanged across millions of years. Males can weigh 2 tons, their single horn composed of compressed keratin rather than bone, growing throughout the animal's life. The Rapti River meanders through Chitwan, its waters hosting gharials, fish-eating crocodiles with elongated snouts lined with 110 interlocking teeth. These reptiles were critically endangered by the 1970s, surviving in numbers so low that breeding programs seemed futile. Protection allowed recovery, though gharials remain vulnerable, their existence depending on parks like Chitwan maintaining suitable habitat. Over 550 bird species inhabit the park's varied ecosystems. Paradise flycatchers trail impossibly long tail feathers through the canopy. Peacocks display in clearings, their calls echoing through morning mist. Bengal floricans perform elaborate courtship dances in the grasslands. Giant hornbills nest in tree cavities, their massive beaks designed for accessing fruit other birds cannot reach. Tharu people inhabit villages surrounding the park, their culture adapted to living alongside wildlife that can be dangerous. Their traditional knowledge of the forest, passed through generations, now aids conservation efforts. Former hunters became guides, poachers transformed into guards, antagonism evolved toward coexistence. Elephant-back safaris move through the tall grass, the massive herbivores parting vegetation that would be impassable on foot. From elevated howdahs, visitors peer into dense undergrowth where rhinos graze and sloth bears forage. The elephants themselves represent domesticated Asian elephants, smaller and more manageable than their African relatives, essential partners in both tourism and anti-poaching patrols. As the sun sets over Chitwan, tiger roars echo through the forest. a sound that once seemed destined to fade into memory, but instead continues, a testament to what remains possible when protection becomes priority. Returning to the Kathmandu Valley, where the Bagmati River flows between the old cities, one temple complex transcends all others in sacred significance for Nepal's Hindu population. Pashupatinath sprawls along both banks of the river, its main temple dedicated to Shiva in his aspect as Pashupati, Lord of Animals. The temple's origins disappear into antiquity, though legend claims that Shiva and Parvati took the form of deer and hid in the forest that once covered this valley. When other gods attempted to find them, Shiva's horn broke into 4 pieces that became lingams, symbolic representations of the divine. The main lingam inside Pashupatinath temple possesses 4 faces, representing Shiva's omnidirectional consciousness. Only Hindus may enter the main temple courtyard, a restriction that maintains the site's sacred character while excluding casual tourism. From the opposite bank, however, the entire complex reveals itself. The massive gilt roof supported by silver-plated doors, smaller temples and shrines clustering around the main structure, sadhus, holy men, sitting in meditation on stone platforms. The Bagmati River flows beneath footbridges connecting the banks, its water considered sacred despite the pollution that has sadly compromised its purity. Hindus believe that dying at Pashupatinath and having one's ashes scattered in the Bagmati ensures liberation from the cycle of rebirth. The river eventually joins the Ganges, Nepal's waters merging with India's holiest stream. Stone platforms called ghats descend to the water's edge, some reserved for cremation ceremonies. Funeral pyres burn here continuously, the smoke rising as bodies return to the 5 elements. Hindu funeral rites prescribe that the eldest son lights the pyre, walking around it 5 times while chanting mantras. The ceremony unfolds publicly, reminding all observers of mortality's universality. Upstream from the burning ghats, devotees bathe in the river, purifying themselves before worship. Priests perform ceremonies on stone platforms, applying tika marks to foreheads, offering flowers and incense to the divine. Monkeys scramble along temple roofs, tolerated because of their association with Hanuman, the monkey god of Hindu legend. During Mahashivaratri, the great night of Shiva, Pashupatinath becomes the center of religious fervor. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims converge on the temple, many having walked for days from distant villages. Sadhus arrive from across the Indian subcontinent, some naked and ash-covered, others dressed in orange robes, all seeking darshan, the blessing of seeing and being seen by the divine. As evening approaches and oil lamps begin to flicker along the riverbank, the chanting of Sanskrit hymns fills the air. Smoke from countless small offerings mixes with the smoke from funeral pyres, creating a haze that softens the light. In this space where life and death meet without boundary, Pashupatinath embodies Hinduism's ancient understanding that all opposites are ultimately one. Climbing east from Lukla's hilltop airstrip, following the Dudh Kosi River upstream, the trekking trail ascends through rhododendron forests and across suspension bridges that sway above churning glacial waters. After 2 days, the valley opens into a natural amphitheater carved into the mountainside, where stone houses cluster at 3,440 meters elevation. Namche Bazaar serves as the commercial and cultural heart of the Khumbu, a place where Sherpa culture adapted to the arrival of mountaineering expeditions and transformed challenge into livelihood. The Sherpa people migrated to these heights from eastern Tibet, perhaps 5 centuries ago, bringing their Buddhist faith and their remarkable tolerance for altitude. They established villages and valleys where most humans cannot live permanently, farming potatoes and barley while herding yaks across high pastures. When mountaineering expeditions began arriving in the 1950s, Sherpas proved essential. Their strength, endurance, and route-finding skills made them indispensable partners in attempts on the highest peaks. Namche grew from a seasonal trading post into a permanent town, its growth fueled by trekking tourism and climbing expeditions. Saturday markets still draw villagers from surrounding settlements who sell vegetables, dried cheese, woolen goods, and traditional butter churned from yak milk. But modern Namche also offers Wi-Fi, bakeries serving apple pie and cappuccinos, gear shops renting down jackets and sleeping bags, lodges providing hot showers through solar panels. The town curves around a bowl carved by an ancient glacier, its buildings stacked in tiers connected by steep stone staircases. At the upper edge, a stupa marks the trail toward Everest Base Camp and Gokyo Lakes, its prayer wheels spun by passing trekkers. From nearly any point in town, Kongdari and Thamserku peaks dominate the western view, while the sacred summit of Kumbila watches over the entire valley. The Sherpa Culture Museum occupies a building on Namche's northern edge, documenting the transformation from subsistence farming to high-altitude mountaineering. Photographs of early expeditions line the walls. Grainy images of Hillary and Tenzing, of Herzog's frostbitten hands, of Messner's solo Everest ascent. Display cases hold traditional clothing, farming implements, religious texts, climbing equipment from various eras. Adjacent to the museum, the Sagarmatha National Park headquarters provides information about the region's ecology and conservation challenges. The park, established in 1976 and designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979, protects 1,148 square kilometers of the highest mountain environment on Earth. Rangers monitor illegal hunting, manage waste from expeditions, and educate visitors about minimal impact practices. Everest Bakery and German Bakery compete for trekkers seeking carbohydrates and companionship. Conversations flow between tables, trail conditions, altitude symptoms, summit attempts, weather forecasts. The social aspect of high-altitude trekking reveals itself here, strangers becoming companions through shared experience of thin air and long approaches. As afternoon clouds build below the town, obscuring the valleys but leaving the peaks exposed, Namche demonstrates how traditional cultures can adapt without entirely surrendering to modernity. Prayer flags still flutter from every roof. Monasteries still call the faithful to prayer. But commerce flows. Wi-Fi signals connect to distant cities, and helicopter rescues save lives that would have been lost a generation ago. Beyond the Annapurna Circuit's main trail, accessible only to those willing to add several challenging days to an already demanding trek, a lake exists at an elevation where most humans struggle to function. Tilicho Lake sits at 4,919 meters in a glacial basin beneath Tilicho Peak, its waters the highest of any lake of significant size on Earth. The approach to Tilicho follows the Marsiangdi River upstream from Manang, ascending through increasingly barren landscape as vegetation surrenders to altitude. The trail crosses avalanche zones and traverses cliff faces where rock falls demonstrate geology's indifference to human passage. Most trekkers take 2 days from Manang to reach Tilicho Base Camp, acclimatizing slowly as oxygen levels drop. From base camp, the final approach requires an early start, hiking before dawn to avoid afternoon storms. The trail climbs relentlessly, switchbacking up a ridge before dropping slightly into the basin that cradles the lake. Then, rounding a final rocky shoulder, Tilicho reveals itself, a sheet of turquoise water stretching nearly 5 kilometers in length, surrounded by peaks that wall off the horizon in every direction. The lake's color varies with light and season, ranging from deep blue to brilliant turquoise depending on glacial melt and suspended sediment. In October, before winter freezes the surface solid, the water achieves its most vivid hue. By December, ice claims the lake until May, creating a white plain broken by pressure ridges. Hindu pilgrims have visited Tilicho for centuries, considering its waters sacred. Some identify it as the lake from which the sage Vishvamitra meditated, while others believe Lord Brahma created the universe from waters located here. Small shrines and prayer flags mark the shoreline, placed by pilgrims who completed the journey despite altitude and weather. The lake attracts adventure trekkers seeking destinations beyond the standard routes, people drawn to extremes and willing to accept significant discomfort to reach them. Acute mountain sickness threatens constantly at this elevation. Headaches, nausea, and exhaustion affect even well-acclimatized trekkers. Some visitors reach the lake only to immediately retreat, their bodies unable to tolerate the thin air. The surrounding peaks rise another 1,000 meters above the lake, their summits technical climbing objectives rarely attempted. Tilicho Peak itself reaches 7,134 meters, glaciated and complex. Avalanches rumble down its faces regularly, their echoes rolling across the lake basin. Weather at Tilicho changes with frightening speed. Morning calm transforms into afternoon storms. Clouds boil up from valleys, enveloping the lake in white nothing. Temperature swings 40 degrees between day and night. Wind accelerates through the basin with enough force to knock trekkers off balance. Standing on the rocky shore at dawn, watching first light paint the surrounding peaks while the lake surface mirrors infinity, the effort required to reach this place feels justified. Tilicho offers no practical purpose, holds no commercial value, provides no resources worth extracting. It exists simply as a place of extreme beauty at the edge of human tolerance, a destination for those who need to know that such places remain. From the lowland jungles where tigers hunt to the high lakes where ice and rock meet sky, Nepal contains more vertical diversity than seems geographically possible. 8 of the world's 14 highest mountains rise from this small nation, yet the country's soul resides not in altitude statistics, but in the prayer flags that flutter at every elevation, in the monasteries that cling to impossible slopes, in the temples where devotion persists across centuries. The mountains will stand when the last human has descended from their heights. The rivers will flow whether or not anyone walks their banks. But something essential passes between the land and those who traverse it, an understanding that beauty and difficulty often coincide, that the world's most profound places demand effort to reach, that standing in the shadow of giants changes how one measures significance. Nepal offers no easy answers, no simplified experiences. It asks instead that visitors meet it as it is, complex, sacred, challenging, magnificent. In return, it provides glimpses of something larger than individual existence, moments when the boundary between self and landscape dissolves, leaving only wonder,